Hey, how you doing? My name is Wesley Benetti. I come from the Atheist Nomads podcast, and I want you to know I'm a proud ally of the LGBT community. Thank you very much.
Coming to you on Secular Media Network, this is the Atheist Manifesto, your source for news, commentary, discussion, and debate at the intersection of the atheist movement and the LGBT rights movement. I'm your host, Callie Wright, and I'm joined as always by my co-host, Jonathan Moore.
Hello.
And Daniel Wolfsong.
Hey, everyone. Today,
we are going to have a conversation about discourse and debate and how we can all become master debaters. Did I say something funny? But in all seriousness, how we engage people on the issues that face us as the queer and trans community and the atheist community, that stuff matters. How we engage in these conversations can make the difference between changing someone's mind and making them dig their heels in even further. And of course, as always, we have a Be a Better Ally segment at the end, where we're going to talk about why being bisexual and being pansexual aren't the same thing. But before we jump into the show, I had a brief talk with Daniel Duncan. He is the organizer of the Skepperty game at ReasonCon this upcoming weekend that I will be participating in, and he is a passionate straight ally to the LGBT community. Daniel Duncan, welcome to the Atheist Manifesto.
Glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. So you're the one who was responsible for putting together the Skepperty game at ReasonCon.
That's correct. Yeah, I brought the idea to Gene about 5 or 6 months ago whenever I heard we were going to have so many more podcasters this year, and I just wanted to have something fun for them to get involved in.
So is there a betting pool for who's going to win?
I have no idea. I've been focusing all my energy on the game itself and working my ass off at work.
Oh, you diplomat, you. I've just been spending a lot of time talking crap to David Smalley and Phil Ferguson and Bobby C and all those guys. So I'm going to be meeting a lot of those guys for the first time at the show, so it's going to be really fun to do all of this. So a lot of the reason why I wanted to have you on is because I'm friends with Adam Reeks from The Herd Mentality, and I heard a commercial for ReasonCon that you did on his show, and in the intro to the commercial, you said, "Ladies, gentlemen," and I think it was non-binary identified people. So tell me a little bit about that, why that was something that was important for you to do.
Well, I always thought it was important to get more people in my circle than I had previously. My mom raised me to be very inclusive, and I had a lot of gay friends and trans friends that I made while I was in college, and I just realized that if I didn't include that, I would be leaving a lot of people out.
That's so freaking cool. And just to clarify, you are a straight ally, is that correct?
That's correct, yeah. I'm married. I just had my 5-year anniversary with my wife. I've just always been passionate ever since about 15 years ago whenever my friend Renee got me into gay activism.
That's so cool. So, and congratulations on your 5-year anniversary, by the way. That's awesome. So, and if memory serves, when we were emailing back and forth, you mentioned something about being the president of a GSA at your college?
Yeah, that was something that my friend Renee, who blogs at Lady Business Plus, she's a book blogger, she got me into that when we were in college together, and I realized that I'm in a position of privilege, and so it makes a big impact if someone like that steps up and takes the forefront for something like that whenever people don't feel comfortable doing it.
Tell me what being an ally means to you.
Being an ally just means making sure that the people that I care about are represented fairly. There's a lot of misrepresentation in the media and among people in general, and it's my job to correct that whenever I see it.
Very cool. So talk to me about ReasonCon. This is going to be not only my first ReasonCon, but actually my first atheist, skeptic, humanist, free thought, 10 other words convention that I've ever been to. So Obviously, you're a fan because you've taken on the responsibility of setting this whole thing up for them. So just talk to me about the con, why it's awesome, and why people should go.
It's actually was my first con last year. It's the only con I've ever been to because I work a lot, and it was absolutely amazing last year. Just meeting people that I'd listened to over the internet, meeting a lot of other fans, right, and listening to some really interesting talks by really interesting people, right, and then just hanging out and getting rip-roaring drunk and listening to whatever flowed out of everybody's mouths. It was amazing last year, and it's going to be just as amazing this year, I'm sure.
So who all's going to be there this year? I've talked a bunch on the show. I've talked a bunch of crap about all the people playing the Skepperty game because I think that's fun, but I don't think I've ever actually mentioned who's all going to be there.
Yeah, the big get this year is having Tracy Harris return. She was so amazing last year, speaking about analogies, and unfortunately for Ryan Bell, just completely destroying his entire topic right after he was on stage. He had been speaking last year about staying in the liminal space between choosing to believe or choosing not to believe.
And to be clear, Ryan Bell is the year without God guy, right?
That's correct. And Tracy Harris came on right after him and said, definitionally, if you don't believe in God, you are an atheist. Sorry, Ryan, or something to that effect.
Shots fired.
I know, it was fun. She's such a funny person. She's so smart, and we're really happy to have her back this year. We're also from the Austin, the atheist community of Austin. We're bringing in Beth Presswood. She's a feminist writer, and we're really excited to have her on. Most people know her from being married to Matt Dillahunty, but she does great content on her Facebook, and she did a great podcast called Godless Bitches until it retired a few years ago.
So you live there in North Carolina, right? Not too far away from where it's going to be?
I actually live down in South Carolina below Greenville,
okay.
So I'm about 4 hours away from Gene. That's why this was the one thing that I could do to help.
Cool. So tell me what it's like to be an atheist down there.
Most of the time, it's not a big deal for me personally, but I am not terribly open. It's hard to be open about that whenever there's so many people that just assume you go to church. I had a really funny incident yesterday whenever I was telling one of my supervisor type people at work that I was going to a conference next weekend and wouldn't be able to come to work. And she said, "Oh, is it a Bible conference?" I said, "No, quite the opposite, actually."
I mean, I guess if you wanted to be stealthy, you could say yes, because the Bible will be heavily involved.
Oh yeah, it's got 3 sections of the game show taken up. But I decided it was probably better to be open about what I was doing, and a coworker who was standing nearby picked up that it was going to be an atheist conference. I was shocked by that. And immediately my supervisor started saying, "I don't want to talk about it." And immediately after that gave me the look at the trees defense.
How can you look at the trees and, God. That's probably one of the most annoying arguments.
Yeah, I was very tempted to use Heath and Noah's suggestion to just make farm animal noises at her.
Well, so how do you normally respond in situations like that? Because the reason I ask is because for me, like, I'm in Cincinnati, Ohio, and there's a pretty good overlap between liberal and conservative here, and being an atheist really isn't that big of a deal. I've never told someone I was an atheist and had them react in a super, super negative way. I mean, I've gotten some dirty looks and some skepticism and stuff like that, but I don't generally fear negative consequences for being atheist here. And I know there are lots of places in the country where that's not the case. So if you're talking to someone and they say, like, "Oh, where do you go to church?" or, they try and bring up a conversation like that, what do you say?
I usually say, I don't go to church, or I'll bring up the humanist meeting that I attend very irregularly. But most of the time, I will be honest, I tend to deflect. Yesterday was kind of me stepping out from that pattern.
Very cool. And I want to be clear that I'm not trying to shame you by doing that, because I'm a very big proponent of only being out when you're one, safe, and two, comfortable doing it. I don't think you should ever feel obligated. I'm just curious about the experience, because like I said, coming out as trans was my big thing. I've been an outspoken atheist since I was like 16 or 17 years old. So it's never really been a big deal for me. So I just always like to learn what other people's experiences are with atheism, because I know, I know for a lot of people, coming out as atheists can be just as dangerous and just as hard as coming out as any flavor of LGBT. So that's why I asked. I just wanted to make sure that you didn't think that I was trying to gotcha, jerk,
Absolutely not. And I tend to just stay very quiet about any beliefs until I get comfortable with people, right? And that's where I was with my supervisor yesterday. Was that I've worked with her for 3 months now, and we've got a good working relationship. And so I figured she's already established that I'm a good person, that I'm a good worker. So now It's time for me to say I am also an atheist, which is not a bad thing.
Right. Yeah, I think that's super important, because that's how we change people's perceptions, right? I had somebody ask me if I was atheist once, and I said, yeah, I'm an atheist. And she goes, so full on all the way atheist? And I was just like, what do you even mean by that?
Yeah, a lot of
so there's definitely a need for those conversations to happen.
Yeah, and in my previous job, it was the same way. I actually worked with the same group of people for almost 2.5 years before I ever said anything about religion whatsoever. And then that's whenever I started breaking out of my shell and being open about my atheism. And then I changed jobs and I never talked to anybody because I drive a truck.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's weird at work, because so many times, because Christianity is the default, people feel very comfortable and oh yeah, I heard this at church the other day and all that sort of thing, and you're over here like, oh boy, don't ask me, because that generally you're probably the odd one out. So usually I try and keep that stuff outside of work anyways, just because I'm at work and I'm not getting paid to be an activist at work. But, if the subject comes up, I'm generally not afraid to, if somebody asks me oh, what do you spend all your time doing outside of work? Well, I do a podcast, and inevitably, well, what's your podcast about? Well, it's about the intersection of atheist and LGBT activism. And sometimes people are just like, okay. And that's the end of the conversation. And well, that's okay. So very cool. So tell me, are there still tickets left for ReasonCon? Do you know?
Last I checked, there were still tickets available. I believe the VIP Plus bundle has sold out, but to my knowledge, we still have VIP tickets available. And at the VIP dinner, Heath, Noah, and Lucinda from the Scathing Atheist will be giving a roast to God, a la Justin Bieber, which I think teenage girls think are the same thing.
Oh, that was well played. Yeah, and I'm a little bummed. I'm not going to be able to get there until late Friday, so I'm probably going to miss that. So I'm pretty bummed about that. But God, that's going to be amazing. So if you're listening and you can get there, please do. Well, and where can people go to get tickets and find out more?
You can find out more and get your tickets at reasonnc.com. Check out the Facebook page. We've got some interesting info on there as well. There's a list of all the podcasters that will be available on the Podcaster Throng on the website, reasonnc.com. And don't forget to book your hotel. Believe there are still rooms available on site, and there are several hotels within walking distance.
Very cool. Daniel, I want to thank you for taking the time out to talk to us for a minute today, and thank you for what you do. So really, really looking forward to meeting you next weekend.
Absolutely. I can't wait, and I hope you have a great weekend.
You too, my friend. And just to be clear, I've been informed since we recorded that VIP tickets for the event are sold out, but regular tickets are still available. If this all sounds like fun, get yourself to Hickory, North Carolina this coming Friday and Saturday, April 24th and 25th for ReasonCon. I'm going to be there, and frankly, that's all the reason you should need. Wink, wink. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back with more of the Gaytheist Manifesto.
We are given one life, full of billions of small and large decisions. To be somebody, to change, to be kind, to give hope, to become a better person, and to leave a lasting impact on this planet. It is a decision to be made every single day while your heart is still beating. We've made our decision. Absence of clothing, atheist and science-based apparel and merchandise, donating 50% of our profits to charity. Look good and feel good, without God. Check us out at absenceofclothing.com and find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest, and Tumblr.
Welcome back to the Gaytheist Manifesto. Today we're talking about discourse and debate and how we can and should effectively engage with the people who disagree with us on matters of religion or LGBT rights. Personally, I've heard extremely convincing arguments from a few different perspectives on the subject. When it comes to religion, I've heard people say the Socratic method is the best way to go. Ask people questions and make them think so they can come to their own conclusions. I've heard convincing arguments for being harsh with people to shock them out of their complacency. In fact, my own journey towards atheism was in some ways started by just such a comment. When it comes to LGBT rights, I've heard much the same. Be patient. It takes time to change minds. But from the other side, people are suffering and dying at this very second, and we can't afford to be patient and understanding with these people. These are ridiculously complicated issues, and I thought it was important to have a discussion about them. So today we're just going to have an open-ended roundtable discussion about the topic and see where we land. Gentlemen, what are you thinking?
I've been thinking a lot lately about how talking with someone or having just a general debate with someone that you don't agree with is actually really similar to talking to someone that you do care about when you disagree. The same rules seem to apply. No personal attacks, no logical fallacies like moving the goalpost, or no straw man arguments, things like that. That's a pretty good place to start when you're having a debate, especially when it comes to things like this, because when it comes to anything related to religion, and especially topics like LGBT rights, you're going to have people who feel extremely passionately from both sides, and if you're going to have a debate that has any usefulness whatsoever, you've got to stay away from the urge to get aggressive or make it intensely personal when it doesn't have to be.
Jonathan, what do you got?
I think it can be difficult because it's hard to change people's long-held beliefs, and sometimes, I'm not looking for an argument with people. I want to respect their beliefs, as long as they respect mine. I'm not out to attack anybody. I'm not out to, get on people for what they believe. As long as what they believe isn't adversely affecting me. I had a roommate who, would constantly get on me and get down on me for being atheist, and I just, it was a no-win argument. I just didn't want to do it because there was no way his mind was going to be changed, so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's kind of the constant struggle, because so often, I want to respect someone's beliefs as long as those beliefs don't include their right to infringe on mine, right?
Exactly.
But the problem is, you can't always separate the two. So someone who has this quasi-intellectual, or at least they think it's a quasi-intellectual argument against same-sex marriage, for example, or against non-discrimination laws, obviously you're entitled to think and believe whatever you want about those kind of things, but the thing is, those people vote. So you have to engage on some level if you want change. So, the thing that we hear all the time in the LGBT community is, well, it's just not time yet. And every time you pass an anti-discrimination law or something like that, you force this on people who aren't ready for it and end up hurting your own position. And I'm going to be honest and say that part of me, I kind of hear that. But at the other end of the spectrum, am I supposed to just be patient and wait to be treated like a human being until someone decides to stop being a bigot?
Well, that's the thing. Yeah, it's never going to be time if you keep going like that. It's the same thing with civil rights for people of color. If we had waited for people to decide that they weren't going to be discriminating against black people, we'd still, have signs that say, white only drinking fountain.
Well, how does an anti-discrimination law infringe on somebody else's rights?
Well, it goes back to the argument of, well, my religion says that I can't. It's that whole thing that we talked about in the anti-discrimination law episode, where people think that because their interpretation of their religion says that they can't endorse or support this quote-unquote lifestyle, that forcing them to treat us like they treat everyone else is a violation of their religious freedom.
Yeah. See, and I disagree that their rights are actually being infringed upon.
Oh, I do too.
Yeah. Okay. Good. And I think maybe that's where these debates come in really handy, because we have a chance to, with kindness and some degree of patience, say, look, okay, I'm hearing you tell me that you think your rights are being infringed upon, or that your faith is somehow being violated, your religious rights are being violated. Here's why they aren't. Boom, boom, and boom. And the only way that conversation can really effectively take place is if both people are going into it with an open mind. And what usually ends up happening is these conversations devolve into just madness. Mm-hmm. And
I think part of it is leading by example. It's this whole thing. You can talk the talk, but living your life and showing that you're a good person, that you're a normal person, that you're just trying to be, the best member of society that you can be, that speaks volumes to people, I think.
I think it does. So here's what I struggle with, because obviously we know there are people who are not going to be swayed by a passionate argument or by getting to know someone. Because, how many times have we heard, like, well, I have gay friends and I love them just as much as anyone else, but I still don't agree with their lifestyle. Like, I was having that Facebook debate literally before we started recording this episode. So, the question is, how do we deal with that? Because I think there is some merit to saying, well, you make your argument, and if their mind isn't changed, just kind of leave it go, because you're at least leaving the door open to further conversation. But at the same time, oftentimes that involves, like, well, you know what? That person is still going to vote against me in the next election. Like, that person is literally using force in some way to deny me the rights that I have. So what recourse do we have? What recourse should we have? How should we react to that?
We're not going to change everyone's minds, obviously, right? So, and there's actually, there's a scientific name for it. It's a psychological reality that usually if you have your mind made up about something, nothing will change it. It's not the ability to have your mind changed lies completely within you. If you're not open to having a different point of view, your brain will literally ensure that you discount all incoming information that doesn't match what you believe. And so that's what we're up against a lot of times in debates with people like this. What we rely on is for society to slowly come around to the point where we can actually say, hey, we think that we should be able to get married now, and then watching that slowly cascade into federal law. But we have to. That's sort of the kicker with any progressive movement is there does have to be a right time and place for it, and there's nothing that we can really do by ourselves to make it happen. We rely on those who are in power and places of privilege.
So do either of you guys have any sort of, like, holy crap, amazing stories about changing someone's mind about when it comes to religion or LGBT issues?
I convinced a guy to leave seminary once after we had a debate, it didn't happen right away. But he told me a few months later that he actually he was studying to become a preacher, and we just had a conversation. And I was pointing out this was 10, 15 years ago, and I was bringing up points like, well, jealousy is a human emotion. Why would the creator of the universe need an emotion like jealousy? What purpose would that serve an all-powerful creator deity? And we just sort of picked it apart, like that. And then he told me later on that those were questions that he couldn't resolve, and ended up deciding to not become a preacher. So it's
just sort of a, being patient and using the logical arguments. Because, well, one thing that you often hear among the more intellectual circles in the atheist movement is that you have to take emotion completely out of it, right? Because you want to know what are the facts, what are the realities, and then work from there, right? And emotion can get in the way of that sometimes. Mm-hmm. But, the other side of that I see is that we are human beings and we have emotions, and it's a lot of times it's pretty impossible to remove those things from the argument.
Yeah, that's the challenge.
Yeah, so as much as I love the logical arguments like that, and I can go on for days and days and days about all of the logical and rational problems with religion, but for me, the things that I like to go towards are like, do you honestly think that I deserve hell? Mm-hmm. Do you think that you deserve hell? Do you really think that you are so terrible that you deserve eternal torture?
And see, that just goes that for me, in my experience, always devolves into just this circular conversation where, they'll say we don't deserve hell. That's why he's created a way for us to not, we send ourselves to hell, not God. God doesn't do it. We do it, and he's provided a way out. And there's always going to be that circular argument because, like what you were just saying, Callie, we're trying to take the emotions out of a conversation that for many people is they are very emotionally invested in it. Mm-hmm. If someone asked you to emotionally detach from someone that you love and then just use strict logic in defending your relationship with that person, you'd have a hard time with that because you're very emotionally invested in someone that you love. You don't look at it from a purely logical point of view, and that's the same with Christians. I
agree. Jonathan, do you have any sort of stories like that where you change someone's mind? Or
I'm not very good at changing people's minds. I debate with people, but I like I said, I tend to like to, I'm honestly not very good at like confrontational type situations. I tend to like to avoid them. I can defend myself when need be, but I'm more of a lover, not a fighter. So
that doesn't surprise me, knowing you.
I am a professional arguer by nature.
Yeah, I kind of am too. Like my mom growing up told me that I was either going to be a lawyer or a politician, and thankfully I ended up as neither. No offense if we have any of those in the audience.
I think
not
I would have
something
made
I
a
can
good
handle.
lawyer,
I don't think.
No, I couldn't do that.
Right.
Yeah,
I hear you. So one thing that I always sort of come back to, because people always talk about engaging in these discussions with compassion and with, recognizing that sometimes you have to meet other people where they are, to help change their mind, to at least get them to see your point of view. But I was thinking a lot about what led me to atheism in the first place. And a lot of it was this guy that I went to high school with, and hearing him talk about Christianity as if it was just the dumbest thing ever and saying really insulting things about Christianity, that sort of jolted me into like, wow, I've got to prove this guy wrong. I've got to defend what I believe in. And this is me, 14, 15 years old, but I was still like, budding intellectual at that time. So I was like, man, I got to prove this guy wrong. And that's kind of what made me examine it so much in the first place and sort of set me on the path to coming out of it. So, and obviously I know personal, experience doesn't, Anecdote doesn't equal evidence, right? So I'm not trying to say that, this is like, something that everyone should consider, but I think it's important because I know I'm not the only person who's had an experience like that. So I think it's hard to completely dismiss that sort of approach as sometimes being effective.
I mean, I think, are you saying that their criticism of Christianity kind of caused you to begin questioning?
Well, right, because I had grown up, and like I've said before, I wasn't super like religiously indoctrinated or anything like that. I wasn't, raised in a super religious environment, but, my grandma's super religious, always has been, and I went to church with her, and just from doing that, I just kind of got the idea that Christianity is just the default thing, right? And that there's kind of something wrong with anyone who isn't, or who rejects it or says bad things about it. And here was this guy doing that shamelessly. And it was kind of like, wow, it was sort of being exposed to something that I'd never understood the concept of before. So it kind of spurred this thing in me like, wow, it made me think more is what it really comes down to. And I know some people that's going to turn them off completely, and they're going to dig their heels in and completely ignore anything you have to say.
I think your willingness to have your mind changed, or your ability to have your mind changed, is probably directly proportional to how emotionally invested you are in being right about something.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I agree. And I guess I was young enough and kind of, entering that teenage rebellious phase that I was just kind of ready to, there was part of me that was kind of ready to go against what the mainstream thing was at the time, maybe. Yeah. I don't know. So, yeah. So, and I guess you're right. I mean, it does kind of depend on the person. I mean, obviously different people are going to respond to different approaches. But I think that's something to keep in mind, that, that approach isn't always necessarily to be discounted out of hand, I think.
I think that, depending on, I think for most people, unless you're just blindly debating on the internet, if you're having a heart-to-heart with somebody, and the purpose of the conversation is really for both of you to state the way you feel about something in a way that actually is useful or meaningful, you'll be able to know. You can tell whether this is someone who is going to respond well to cold hard logic, or if they're so emotionally invested in their point of view that you have to be extremely careful with how you do it.
Yeah, I agree. So I posted something on Facebook last night about this topic, and just kind of engaging some of my friends and some of our listeners in this discussion, and kind of seeing what their thoughts were. So I'm going to read some of the comments here, and we can just kind of discuss and see what we think. So I didn't get permission for names, so I'm going to leave the names out. So a friend of mine says, I engage hard, all in. I'll answer any question, no matter how offensive or idiotic, but that's only if I know enough about the person to be sure they are coming from a place of honest ignorance or indoctrination. I don't play with internet trolls, but I'm a hetero woman, so I don't speak from experience necessarily, just understanding. On the religion aspect, I am patient and mostly calm. Kill 'em with questions. So that's sort of an advocating of the Socratic method of asking people questions and kind of leading people to their own understanding. And I think that's really valuable.
I think that's my preferred method, actually.
Yeah, I think it is mine too in most cases, because I know for me, if people ask me questions to lead me to my own understanding, I know it helps me understand things a lot more. I know, coming to what understanding it's possible for me to have of race issues. I think that's kind of how I got there with that. Also with recognizing some of the intersectionality between racism and homophobia and transphobia, and some of the similar underlying attitudes. So someone else says cry. We don't,
Wait, cry?
I can't say I've ever done that.
That's their approach, just cry?
That's the answer, cry, yeah. Well, and I think it's important for us to recognize, because the three of us, we're super outgoing people. We're willing to have conversations with pretty much anyone, and we're generally well equipped to have these kinds of conversations. I think it's important to recognize that not everyone is. So someone else says, I'll ask questions about aspects of their belief they might not have considered, or I'll talk about personal experiences to widen their perspective. I try to relate to where they're coming from and think about why they feel or believe in something. Unless they're completely dug in, then I let them know what I think and move on to another topic. Agree to disagree.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's definitely my agree to disagree is my approach a lot of the time. I tend to get a little flustered and forget my points, and I'm pretty honestly kind of bad at this stuff. So,
well, and that's okay. I think. I mean, you do what you're comfortable with where you're at. Mm-hmm. I think asking questions about aspects of the belief they might not have considered, I think that's important too, because oftentimes you run into people who haven't necessarily done all the research, and I think. Conversely, it's incumbent upon us as people who want to have these conversations that we know our stuff too. That, we know the logical fallacies, we know the facts and figures behind the arguments that we're making. I think that's a responsibility that we have, and it's a super important one.
And it's super useful too.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Not just it's useful to, especially with logical fallacies. I've been studying those a lot these past few years because A, it helps you spot them when someone else is doing it and calling them out. And B, it helps you to not do them.
Right, exactly.
because they're very easy to slip into, and one of the best ways to diffuse, a really idiotic point that someone's making is when they, if they're relying on a logical fallacy, just point it out and say, okay, this is a logical fallacy. This is what it is. This is why it's not good. Can you make your point without relying on this fallacy? Yeah.
I think one of the problems in a lot of those arguments is you get this, since you have a deity who basically can break all the rules anyway, they can just use it. Well, God can do whatever he wants. I get that a lot.
Oh, yeah, I've heard that too. It's his universe, so I don't make the rules kind of thing.
Yeah.
One of my favorite questions to ask people in that, and when we're talking about faith, is what is so good about faith? Can you explain to me why God would prefer everyone just have faith in him rather than to know him to truly exist? Because that mirrors literally nothing else in nature.
Right, and that's actually there's a really great book called A Manual for Creating Atheists by Peter Boghossian, and he's said some pretty problematic things about the LGBT community, but it's a great book nonetheless. And his whole thing basically is about undermining the idea of faith as an epistemology. Yes. So it's not about, debating the Bible with a Christian or debating the Quran with a Muslim. It's about undermining this idea that faith is a good way to know things. Mm-hmm. And I know, at least in getting people to understand my perspective, not necessarily changing other people's minds, but getting people to understand where I'm coming from, I think I can say that's probably been the most effective argument for me. Because that's, it engages the sense of compassion with this other person, right? Because most of the time, the thing that's important to realize is that most of the time when we have these conversations with people, we're not talking to evil people. Right. These people are not this caricature of this evil, twirly mustache, gays don't get rights. You know what I mean? That's not, these are people many times who are honestly ignorant, and I don't mean ignorant in the way that the connotation of ignorant bad. Sometimes people just don't know, and their life experience hasn't allowed them to open their minds, and I think it's important to take people like that who have otherwise a good sense of compassion, and just try and expand that just a little bit and say, hey, this is where I'm at. I was on No Religion Required. Great show. Bobby C. Miss Ashley. Amazing people. And Bobby was talking about how he used to be the one making fun of people in high school for being gay because of his own ignorance. And And he wishes so badly now that he could go back and hug those people and apologize. And, you know, and the discussion we kind of had afterwards was like, look, like we've all done stuff like that.
Yeah.
You know, it's obviously like, you know, if you're a human being and you've done something like that, you're probably going to feel bad about it, and that's okay. But I think feeling bad about it at least tells you that, like, well, that part of my humanity is engaged, and, you know, I think if you did that and didn't feel bad about it, there would be more to worry about, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's where it becomes problematic. We've all been the bad guy.
Right. Exactly.
I am, and even in my own life, my own relationships, I am the bad guy more often than I would like to be.
God, I hear that.
You know, so I think there's a lot to be said for, like you were saying earlier, using questions as sort of a route to get someone to really explore how they feel. Because a lot of times you don't really even know how you feel about something that you disagree with.
Right.
Things like when you were saying, you know, people who are, you know, the homophobia and racism don't intrinsically make you a bad person. I was literally just talking about this with Matt and Tim on Atheism 101, that it's the status quo, cultural status quo, that a lot of times makes us have opinions about things that are probably pretty awful. It's not because we're intrinsically bad people. You know, when it was acceptable in the 50s and 60s to tell black people they had to use different water fountains and eat in different restaurants, I don't believe that every single person who believed that was okay was a bad person. They were accepting a social norm without questioning it. You know? Right.
And that's where I think we have to balance this idea of personal responsibility with cultural influences, right? Because personal responsibility is definitely a thing, but we don't make these decisions in a vacuum either.
Yes, that's true. And I guess one of the questions, and I have this about my own journey too, is how do we get people interested in even beginning that sort of line of questioning of what they believe? So it's, you know, I don't want to tell you that you have to change your mind about something. I'd like to invite you to potentially change your mind. But how do we get people to that point where they're even open to having their minds changed?
That's a good question.
Yeah, and I guess that's kind of what it comes down to, the whole idea of this show. I mean, I think it's been a great discussion, I guess there's not just one answer to that question, because I guess it depends on why the person's mind is closed, and, you know, whether they actually are this hateful caricature of a person, or if they just have this, you know, innocent ignorance where they just don't know. I mean, I think that problem is easier to solve, because those people generally do have compassion, and all you have to do is say, hey, here's the side of things that you haven't seen. Let me invite you into my life so you can see. You know, I was having a conversation with somebody just before we started recording the show, and they were talking about the gay lifestyle. And the gay lifestyle thing always gets me, because I've literally had no one explain to me the general difference between my lifestyle or your guys' lifestyle that's different from the average person, aside from the differences that are caused by people who don't, quote unquote, agree with our lifestyle.
You mean like my boring day where I go to school, do homework, come home, eat dinner, watch TV, and go to sleep? That lifestyle?
Right, exactly.
You know, the whole point of calling it a lifestyle is it's a very calculated measure, in my opinion, to divorce it from being something that's naturally inborn,
right,
to being something that is a choice.
Yeah, I agree.
A lifestyle choice. Because that's a great example of a straw man argument,
right? Because
you're making it something that's way easier to deal with when you say, oh, it's just a lifestyle choice. You can get rid of that and change that. That dehumanizes it, for one, and divorces it from the actual person that it belongs to, and makes it easier to attack.
I think it's a lot of like stereotypes. Like to them, the gay lifestyle is what they see on the news reports of the Pride Parade: a bunch of half-naked guys in sailor caps dancing around, you know, humping everything that moves, and getting drunk and crazy and doing all kind of debaucherous things. And sure, there are plenty of gay guys and I'm sure girls too that partake in that lifestyle. But at least for my life, that's not something that really goes on. I don't know about you, Daniel, but
well, stereotypes. This is a quote that I read by a writer, and I can't remember her name right now, but she said stereotypes. It's not that stereotypes are untrue. It's just that they don't tell the whole truth.
Exactly.
Yeah. I think that's a great quote. So the last post on that post that I made says, in person, I ask a lot of thoughtful questions because oftentimes the person hasn't put a lot of thought into their position and is only spouting rhetoric. And that's okay. I was that person once. We're taught to trust and believe what our parents teach us, and mine were just flat out wrong. Some individuals, on the other hand, are not even worth engaging with. These are the ones who have closed their minds to consideration and will not hear what you have to say no matter what. If I'm unsure of whether a conversation or debate can be productive, I'll ask the individual what their response would be if I could show them irrefutable evidence that they are wrong. If they say they won't even look at it, which is the case more often than it should be, they're a lost cause. So I think there are a couple really important things in there, and I think the I was that person once thing is really, really important to remember, because there are some people who are lifelong atheists. Most of us are not lifelong atheists. Most of us were that person once. And again, that's where engaging this compassion comes back into play. These are not stupid people. These are not evil people. These are people who just haven't had their eyes open to understanding this experience that they don't have or that they weren't exposed to growing up.
I think part of it also has to honestly comes down to a person's age. I think once you get to a certain point, your mind is so made up that nothing's going to change it. Like my parents, they're in my mom's in her 60s, my dad's in his 70s. You know, they've been entrenched for quite a long time. I don't think that anything would ever change their minds about what they think at this point. You know, but if you look at it, look at how, you know, if you look at the statistics, people our age and younger, you know, in their 20s and 30s, are much more open to LGBT people than older people are. And I think it's just a cultural shift, and it's just going to take a little bit of, you know, time on that matter. It's just a natural cycle. Changes don't happen because you're changing people's minds. Change happens because the people who have the old beliefs die.
You know, I think it's a mixture of the two.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, you know, my grandma is a success story of at least partially a changed mind. You know, and again, obviously, anecdote doesn't equal evidence. I get that.
Right.
But it does happen. And you are right. I mean, the statistics definitely bear that out. The younger you are, generally, the more open-minded and progressive you are, on pretty much any issue, really, let alone the LGBT religion issue.
Right.
What I think it is, more than people's minds being closed as they get older, I think it just, and maybe this is saying the same thing, I think it just takes a little bit more for someone's mind to change, if that makes sense. It takes a slightly more drastic thing for someone's mind to change.
Well, you were touching on something earlier, Callie, that I think deserves to be unpacked a bit, and that's in how we actually interface with religious folks or with people who are bigoted towards LGBT folks, and that I think a lot of us out of the box want to treat them as if they are stupid.
I am guilty. So guilty of that.
Yeah,
I'm so guilty of that too.
Me too.
Yeah, because I think it's just because someone's beliefs are stupid, and there are stupid beliefs, that doesn't make them a stupid person. We all believe stupid things.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah, my parent.
And if we can start treating people more along the lines of someone who has reasonable intelligence, I mean, and maybe that won't be the case. If that's not the case, then you have to decide whether or not it's worth your time to continue engaging with somebody who literally cannot wrap their head around the concepts you're presenting. But I think, you know, a lot of times we have an opportunity to just not go to that place where we want to go, which is to ridicule them, to make them feel stupid, to tell them that everything they believe is stupid. Maybe that's where we're going wrong as atheists and as LGBT activists in a lot of our conversations.
You know, for me, I think it comes back to, you know, I have to ask somebody, like, are you interested in wanting to know reality as it is? So wherever that takes you, is that your end goal? Because I think if someone says yes to that, there's at least some working with them. You still have pretty much all of your work ahead of you at that point, because then you have to talk about, what constitutes evidence, what is, what a good line of logic looks like, what is reasonable, what is not reasonable, what is logical, what is illogical. You still have a lot of work ahead of you, but I think someone who's at least open enough to say that, well, I want to know the truth, whatever it is, even if that means I'm wrong. If somebody can say that and be honest about it, I think there's at least a little bit of hope.
I would say so. It seems pretty rare that anyone actually has that point of view, even though I have been there myself, and I've talked to a few who have. That
question that you mentioned, Callie, that's exactly what brought me to atheism. I wanted truth, and I was okay with wherever that would end up leading me, and that's where it led me. Mm-hmm. So I think that's definitely a good starting point for sure.
So I think one of the most powerful things that you can do when you're talking with someone that you disagree with is this concept of steel manning. Have either of you heard of this before?
Yes.
No.
Okay, so we all know what a straw man argument is, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's using an inaccurate using an inaccurate view of someone's argument to make it easier to attack, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So the steel man is the opposite of that. So you build the strongest version of your opponent's argument that you can build, and then show them why it's wrong. So you show your opponent that not only do I understand my side better than you do, I understand your side better than you do. I'm going to state your argument in its strongest possible form and then show you why it's wrong. Mm-hmm. So I think that's probably the most powerful thing you can do, because again, if we're interested in compassion and we're interested in meeting people where they are, I think that's a really effective way to do that, because it shows someone at the very least, like, I'm interested in understanding your point of view. Because so often we hear people say that, well, you're not even interested in understanding where I'm coming from. Mm-hmm. But if you can state their argument more strongly than they can, then that shows them like, holy crap, yeah, they actually really are interested in understanding my point of view. And then you can deconstruct that strongest version of their argument. I think that's probably the most powerful thing that you can do.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting.
And I think it's important to recognize that these things do not happen overnight.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree. I think that another thing, it seems to go without saying, but I'm really surprised at how many debates that I've joined into where this was the case, where you're arguing for something and you don't even know why. You haven't thought your argument through, or your side of the debate. You haven't thought it through meticulously. Mm-hmm. You sort of have a superficial understanding, and I see this on both sides.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
You think you have sort of a superficial idea of what you believe, but then when someone starts, picking that apart logically, it kind of you kind of hit this dead end where like I have not thought this through well enough, and I encourage anyone to, anyone and everyone, whether you're an atheist or not, whatever your feelings are on these issues, to really explore your own arguments. And a good way to do that is to engage in debates with people and have your ass kicked.
Yeah. I could not agree more. I, as an atheist, have had my ass handed to me more than once by a Christian in a debate, and my response usually is like, holy crap, thanks, you gave me a lot to think about.
Yeah.
And, and it forces me to go and do the research.
Sure.
And, I don't think there couldn't be anything bad about that. Like there's nothing but positive that comes from that. Mm-hmm. I feel like now, generally, unless I'm debating somebody like William Lane Craig or something like that, like he'd probably win. But
yeah.
I feel like most of the time I'm pretty well armed, and I think that's important if you want to have these kinds of conversations.
This is almost atheist evangelism.
Yeah, it kind of is, but I think it doesn't even have to be evangelism, because we're not necessarily going out into public and trying to convert people to atheism. Well, it's just more responding to these things when people say them, if that makes sense.
By the way, that book you were talking about, the Manual for Creating Atheists, if anyone has a subscription of Scribd, it's actually on Scribd. I just pulled it up.
Oh, cool.
And his first chapter is called Street Epistemology.
Yeah, that's his whole concept of street epistemology. Yep.
It looks really interesting. Going into the streets, the prisons, the bars, the churches, the schools, and the community. So
yeah, and we have a really big through social networking now we have these huge forums that we can have these kind of debates for better or for worse, depending on your point of view and the experiences you've had.
Right.
But I part of the reason that I abandoned my faith was because I began asking myself hard questions about what I believed, and realized that they every time came to a dead end where there was nothing that supported what I believed. And I just, when you hit that dead end, there's something wrong, because you should be able to take your belief to its logical conclusion and it still hold water.
But there's this concept of the outsider test for faith, and the author's name escapes me right now, but the idea is that you look at all the reasons why you think other people's faiths are wrong and examine if that somehow invalidates your faith too. Like what makes your belief system more valid than the others?
Yes.
And I think that's important, because that's kind of what brought me to, like, well, I guess the way that I think really isn't any more valid than these other ones. So I guess I kind of have to admit to myself that this doesn't make sense to me.
I don't know how many times I've heard regular, evangelical Christians go, haha, Mormonism, that's
Right.
so crazy, Jesus coming to North America.
Oh, hearing Christians talk about Scientology is so funny.
Scientology
God,
too,
it's so
yep.
funny.
Yep.
And even I've had that exact experience, Jonathan, listening to especially my mom talk about her brand of Christianity as if it's the unquestionable truth, but then bringing up Mormonism as just, well, that's just silly.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, I've my parents do that too sometimes. So.
All right, well, guys, this is an important discussion, and we're obviously not going to nail down the whole thing in one podcast,
right.
but I think we brought up some pretty great points, and I think we definitely gave each other and the listener something to think about. So anyone who responded to my Facebook post on this, thank you so much for your input. I'm really, really stoked that I have such awesome, intelligent, and beautiful friends. So we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back with Be a Better Ally.
I'm Daniel Radcliffe, and I believe that reaching out for help is the bravest thing a person can do. If you are struggling and need support, call the Trevor Lifeline at 1-866-488-7386. It's free and confidential, and trained counsellors are there to listen 24/7 without judgment. To learn more about the Trevor Project's life-saving work for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, or questioning young people, go to thetrevorproject.org.
Welcome back to the show. This week's Be a Better Ally segment is brought to you by a mutual friend of Jonathan and I. Her name is Vonda, and she is pansexual. A quick 101 on being pansexual. Someone who's pansexual is someone for whom gender is irrelevant to their attractions. Some people confuse this with bisexual, and that's what Vonda is going to talk about. Think of it like this. I'm bisexual. That means I'm attracted to men and women both. But for me, gender is a factor in my attractions. I'm attracted to both, but there are certain specific things about each gender that attract me. So someone who is pansexual doesn't consider gender at all in the people they're attracted to. So here's what Vonda had to say on the subject. How do you try to embody the desire for understanding in such little time? In regards to the pansexual people in our lives, I think it's vital to understand that identity and sexuality make up a vast, overlapping spectrum of bright and beautiful people rather than a linear expression. And instead of settling in on one spot of this spectrum, we, pansexuals, ignore the boundaries with excitement. Saying we're complicating the LGBT crowd feels a bit like a discounting of the views pansexual folks hold. Like it's too much effort to accept people who don't make a home with a pre-existing identity. Like countless others in the world we share, we simply have too much love to just sit in our seat and keep it to ourselves. So there are a few reasons I think what Vonda says here is really important. She references people saying that we're saying we're complicating the LGBT crowd. And this sort of attitude is just really, really unacceptable to me. If we want to see the queer and trans community for what it really is, we have to honor and respect the fact that gender and sexuality exist on a spectrum, and that not anything resembling a binary. Identity is a complicated issue, and that's okay. I would encourage everyone to work on being comfortable with that and make the effort to learn about the identities that exist outside the typical binaries we think in.
You know, I found, and this isn't just in matters of sexuality and gender, but I found that the more of life that I can view as a spectrum rather than as a binary, the more deeply and beautifully I'm able to perceive things and explore ideas.
I think that's right. I mean, I think life in general, we grow up thinking of things in binaries and in black and white. Yep. And some people are comfortable with that. And, you know, this may be a terribly condescending thing to say, but frankly, I feel sorry for people who are comfortable with seeing the world that way. Mm-hmm. I know when I started to become comfortable with seeing things that, you know, didn't quite fit into, you know, neat little boxes, the world became so much more beautiful and interesting to me. And I was able to appreciate the people in my life so much more. So again, I think it's important, you know, labels are not the problem. Boxes are the problem.
I agree.
And I definitely want to do a discussion about labels in the future. But I will say that just speaking generally, for those of us who have had to struggle to find our place in society and who have had to struggle to normalize the way that we are with ourselves, labels can be good. Boxes are never good.
Yeah, labels can be useful, and I don't want to speak for Vonda because, but I feel like there's something I wanted to clarify that I think Vonda would probably agree with, and that's if you don't identify as pansexual, that's okay. I don't think that the idea here was that being pansexual is better because it involves more of a spectral view of love and attraction and romance. It's fine. We're attracted to who we're attracted to, and that's okay, regardless. But,
actually,
I think there's a lot to be said for being to expanding your mind to allow other people to be that way, even if it makes you somewhat uncomfortable. It's like, well, you know, that's not your experience of life. So
Right. Actually, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that I wish everyone in the world was pansexual. I think that would make life so much easier.
Yes.
You know, I wish that I had a unicorn horn and gigantic wings with which I could survey the countryside. But,
if wishes were unicorns and everyone would fly.
Oh my god, that might be the best thing ever said on this podcast ever. Daniel, you win, my friend. Holy crap.
Yeah, dude, I don't want anyone to underestimate how much I think about being a unicorn on a daily basis.
Are you a fancy unicorn?
That would be awesome. But yeah, that would be amazing. But you know, we're not, and it's okay. But that's the whole. I think that's the whole point of Vonda. What Vonda's saying is it's okay to be these things, even if you're not them. Boxes and looking at things in binary ways are comfortable for us because that's how we're used to viewing the world. But to expand that and to really stretch your mind, that opens up the door to a much richer way of existing, I think.
Well, and I think, you know, not only are people, you know, in certain is there a spectrum and people are in certain places on the spectrum. Some people take up more space on the spectrum than others. You know,
yeah, that's a great
way of looking at it.
Yeah, that's actually really, really good.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, and this is all cool and all. I just can't get the picture out of my head of Daniel as a unicorn.
I know.
So
I think he's a fancy unicorn with a top hat and a monocle.
Oh my god, is that the case, Daniel?
I want to be a robot unicorn.
A robot unicorn.
Okay. All right.
With shiny metallic skin, and I will grant wishes to children and give unicorn rides to cute cubs and vanquish my enemies with my mighty horn.
Do you also poop cheeseburgers?
That seems like a very useful skill that I unfortunately don't have. I think we've got a lot of really good ideas for like humanity 2.0.
Unicorn
and design.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, I can't think of a better way to end this episode than that. My friends, that is going to do it for another episode of the Gatheist Manifesto on Secular Media Network. I want to thank Daniel Duncan. I want to thank our good friend Vonda, all the folks who contributed to our Facebook discussion, and of course my lovely co-host Jonathan and Daniel, Unicorn Daniel.
But of course, I'm getting some of those cheeseburgers after the show.
You can reach us online at facebook.com/The Gatheist Manifesto. You can email us at thegatheistmanifesto@gmail.com. I'm on Twitter at GatheistCallie.
I, Daniel, am on Twitter at Daniel Wolfsong.
And I, Jonathan, am on Twitter at Nerdcub, NERDKUB.
And you can also find the show on Twitter at The Gatheists. Before we go, I want you to know that if you're lost, you're hurting, you're scared, if you feel like no one cares and no one understands, you need to know there's a community out here that loves you, cares for you, and knows that you're capable of amazing things and that you are worthy of love. If you're struggling, please don't be afraid to reach out. Until next time, friends, this is The Gatheist Manifesto.